Let's begin with what is programming. For those who have experience with programming languages, would want to skip this part, but I would suggest that it might have something to add to the knowledge that you already possess. So let's begin. What exactly happens when you write a program? What exactly the computer does for your programs to run? Or what exactly is going on in that black box that allows us to program the computers? We'll start from the very basics. First, we'll understand how the computer works. The first thing to understand is that a computer is just a mindless slave who we call a CPU. What it does is it takes an instruction and executes the instruction. Without going too much into the detail of what that execute word means, we'd simply say we can give simple operations to the CPU. Let's call it opcode, and we give them data with which to use the operation. Let's call that data. So what the CPU would do is read the instruction, and it will use that instruction to work on the data. This result it needs to store somewhere. That is the basis of how a CPU works. Now, adding another component is your RAM. We will not go into much details, but basically what happens is your CPU picks these instructions and the data from the RAM itself and moves to the next line. That is how the CPU translates your operations that you have written into executable binary, which it will work on, and then whatever the output of that operation is, it will write it back to the RAM. This output is what we will read, maybe displayed on a screen or maybe printed out from the printer, so on and so forth. So that is the basic operation. Now let's answer what programs are. The programs are the list of these commands that you have given, the opcode and the data that you want the CPU to execute. That's all what programs are. So what happens is, when you load your program in the RAM and ask the CPU to execute it, what CPU does, what computer does conceptually is it creates a process. It creates a process which will be consisting of all the lines of codes which it is going to execute. And this process has its own internal memory which comes from the RAM, and this memory is where the process will save or read the data from or save the data back to after the operations. Now let's look at how this process behaves, what exactly is happening when the process is running. The first thing that happens is the process will get some amount of memory in the RAM, some amount of area in the RAM where it can work, and it will first load all the lines of codes that you have written, and it will allocate some space again for you to create more of your data, and then it will keep track of which line of code is being executed in something called stack. So basically, whenever the process is executing, it has these concepts called functions. We'll not get into the detail right now, but on the basic level, it's more like how we tell someone who we work with. For example, if I am senior developer, then I'll tell some junior developer to get some tasks done for me. And similarly, if when the accounts department wants me to give some documents to them, then in that case they will ask me to do it. So I am the one who's responsible for giving those documents. Similarly, the junior developer is responsible for getting the task done. Now this division of responsibility is what is represented as functions in a program. And each function, when it runs, it goes on the stack. So let's say I am writing an application. That's happening. Next, I ask the junior developer to write an application for me, or some part of the application that I'm writing. That goes on the stack again. And when he is done, that will come back to me, and then I will finish my task. And that is how the programs, the processes manage the flow of your program. Now, there are certain information in your program which your process might want to keep per stack. For example, if I ask my junior developer to do something for me, then whatever task I have given, maybe I want him or her to write a specific piece of code with some functionality. That functionality I write it down on a memo and give it to the junior developer. After receiving that memo, the junior developer will perform its task, and when it's done, that will just throw that memo into the bin. This process is called variables, or let's call them data that is stored in a variable in a process, and those variables are what reside on these stacks. So the memo for the junior developer will reside in the junior developer stack. Once the job is done, that variable will go away. However, there are some data which are required throughout the lifetime of the process. So let's say the documents that I was asked from the accounts department, that document is something that would probably outlive the process itself. So the account department asks me to get the documents. I will load that document from some external system into the main memory, which I will have a reference to, and that I will pass it back to the accounts department, who will use it and then close it. Basically, in real world, that would be like returning it back to me, and then then me taking it back home. So this management of data is what happens in stack and in the main memory, which we call heap, in the process. Another thing you will hear about are the threads. For example, multi-threaded programming and multi-threaded systems. So what happens in those cases are each process will not just have this one stack of runnable code. It will in fact have multiple such stacks and multiple such runnable code. And for example, this will be stack 2. And in this case, we can say that the process has two threads, one over here and another over here, and they can work in parallel. The CPU will run one part of this thread and then the next one. This moving about is what is called multi-threading, and your process will be able to do multiple tasks at the same time without having to wait for one task to complete before moving on to the next one. Well, what we have seen here is how the computer programs work and what is going on in the background of when you ask the computer to run your program for you.